being a little bit different. A lot of people I know are cooking dinners, feasts for the first time. A lot of people are, my customers that I usually cater for are on their own this year. So trying to help out a little bit by sharing some of Miss T's secret recipes and techniques. So without further ado, I'm going to share my screen and go through some slides that I put together here and tell you what I have got going on. So Thanksgiving 2020, and like I said, the reason I put this together is because 2020 has been a different year for everyone on a lot of different levels. And this is to help people feel good about staying at home and not having large gatherings. I've put together a menu that hopefully will be a festive menu, but I've also included at the bottom there ideas for leftovers. So what I've done is, a feast is a feast. So Thanksgiving traditionally has can be as big as you want it to be. But if you want to talk about what makes Thanksgiving, stuffed turkey, mashed potatoes and gravy and pumpkin pie. So that's where I started, and that's the basics. These are turkey Thanksgiving 101. That's the fundamentals. And here's your shopping list. And don't worry, I'm going to make this presentation recorded or available, so you don't have to copy this down. But if you go through the list with me, the turkey is an option you could use for a turkey. Instead of getting a whole turkey, you can buy a breast portion, just the white meat with the skin that you can stuff. I do that for customers who have smaller families. And you can also get a tofurkey, or my mom, Reba, has suggested a product called Quorn. That's like corn with a Quorn, Quorn, which resembles the white meat of a turkey. So bread would be for the croutons. For the croutons, for the stuffing. And I use white bread, but you can use any kind of bread you want. Celery, the thing I want to say about celery is that of all the vegetables that you want to buy your celery organic. If you can only afford to buy certain things organic, because I know they're more expensive, celery retains a lot of water and a lot of pesticides along with the water. So celery, I would try to get that organic if you can. Carrots, onions, I use yellow onions. You could use white onions. You could probably use red or green onions. They're slightly different in flavor. Garlic, I put salt, pepper, those are the basics, and then the spices vary. And I do have lists elsewhere, or I can give you a list, but if you think of this Scarborough Fair song, the parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme, those would be your basic. I don't use parsley because I don't like the taste of it, but rosemary, sage, and thyme is what I use. You can add to that savory or hot spices if you like. You can, and then we need the basic pantry supplies: flour, sugar, eggs, and butter. At the bottom, Crisco and lard. I have a little thing to say about that. This is the holidays. There are certain times for certain things, and this is definitely a time for, you only do it once a year. There's certain things that you just need it for. So on the other side, I have the equipment and supplies, the equipment that you'll need: foil, roasting pan, a pie pan, a saucepan, a brining bucket. And this is just going to be a bucket large enough to submerge your turkey. And they do have options: a brining bag, which you can buy at the store for about $3, or a big 2-gallon Ziploc bag. I love the 2-gallon size. They're very handy. Additionally, a carving knife, a chopping knife, paper towels. You're probably going to need about a half a roll of paper towels. So your measuring cups, your measuring spoons. You'll need a sieve, otherwise known as a colander, except for, to me, a colander sits in the sink and has bigger holes, whereas a sieve and a sifter have like the similar finer sift to them. So, and then for serving, a gravy boat, serving platters, serving utensils, and then for leftovers, your Cambros and your Tupperwares and your other storage containers. So let's talk about your calendar. No time to waste. I did this presentation yesterday. Today is a different day. Today, I would suggest you shop, or if not today, definitely tomorrow for sure, because you're going to need Tuesday and Wednesday to prep. If you buy your turkey frozen, you're going to want to defrost it in the refrigerator, which takes 3 days, 2 to 3 days. So shop today or tomorrow if you can. Prep on Tuesday and Wednesday. On Tuesday, I've got a list of the pie fixins and the mixed, just prepping some of your vegetables. On the 25th, on Wednesday, I spread it out. You could actually do this all on the 25th, but this way you're just working an hour or so each day. But on the 25th, for sure, you want to brine your turkey. You could brine your turkey on Tuesday, and I say something about, if you brine it on Tuesday, use less salt because you don't want to pickle your turkey. And then also you want to make your croutons at least a day in advance because they want to be nice and dry. And then I have a list for Thanksgiving Day in the early hours and then Thanksgiving Day in the moments before service. I also have on our calendar a suggestion for our leftovers because this is 2020 and 2020 is a different year. My suggestion is if we're having smaller groups and more leftovers, and we know that there are people who can't just go to the food bank and pick up a turkey because they have no place to cook it. But if you warm up a pan of leftovers and take those out to some friends that you know who live in the park, or it's just a suggestion. You don't actually, there's lots of other things you can do. Turkey sandwiches is a real easy standby. Usually the white meat is best for turkey sandwiches. I also include a recipe for turkey croquettes, which is a nice catch-all for all your Thanksgiving leftovers. And then on the 29th, I have you there. If you've got anything left, throw your bones in a pot with a mirepoix and make a turkey soup. So let's talk about some basics on timing. So on the 24th, you have your first prep day. So we'll talk about pie crust. And I have the recipe for the pie crust back of the presentation. It actually came with the food processor, my Cuisinart food processor. I make it in a Cuisinart food processor. I'm sure it can be made with a fork or in a different type of a preparation device, but I've had this particular Cuisinart for going on 25 years now, and it's a keeper. So if you don't have one, get one. And then the other thing, my tip is that take your fat, your butter and your lard or shortening, I use Crisco, and freeze it. I cut my butter into 1/4-inch chunks, basically, 4 by 4 by 4. There's 64 chunks, and it just makes it easier on my sweet darling food processor. So, and then the other thing that I've got on the schedule for today is to prepare the croutons. And I use my leftover heels of bread, and I cut them into about 1/2-inch cubes, and I toast them at a low heat in the oven until brown. And then I just turn off the oven, leave them in there, let the oven cool until, because you want them nice and dry, okay? And then next day, so let's talk about Wednesday, the day before Thanksgiving on the 25th. You're gonna wanna brine your turkey. And this year I use, and usually I use a cup of salt. This year I use sea salt. A cup seems a lot, but you're actually putting in about a gallon or so of water. So it does, and then you're also not eating it, you're rinsing it off thoroughly before you prepare and cook your turkey. So this is just to help tenderize the meat and help the meat itself retain the moisture. So I use a cup of sea salt. I use a rough chopped veg, and I'll explain that a little bit more later, but carrots, celery, onions, and garlic. I use whole peppercorns, about a half a teaspoon of those. I use for my spices thyme, rosemary, and sage, like I said. And what I do with the peppercorns and the spices is that I put them in a cheesecloth. Or you could use, if you don't have cheesecloth, you could use like a tea strainer, a tea ball or something, but you don't want to have to separate them out afterwards. But you do want to steep them. And what we're making here is basically a tea. So you take a quart of water and you boil and you stir until the salt is dissolved. It takes about 10 or 15 minutes, and then you cool it. You can let it cool while you're making your croutons. And you want to let it cool thoroughly and add cold water or even ice cubes before you pour it over your turkey. And you can, you've got time, you're making your croutons. Before you pour the brine over the turkey, you do have to wash and take out the giblets inside, thoroughly wash. I also remove a lot of the fat around the neck and around the thighs, inside the skin. I figure if I'm going to have fat on my bird, I can put butter in later. So, and then the rough cut veg, I'm going to keep my spices and my peppercorns in a cheesecloth so that after I strain off the brine, I have vegetables that I can rinse well and pat dry and use them for the bottom of the pan under the turkey that I'm cooking. And I do want to mention that if you don't drain them very, very well, rinse them very, very well, and then drain them and pat them dry to get the brine off. The brine is going to be densely salty, especially at this stage when it's merely a quart of water and a cup of salt. So you do want to rinse them or your gravy will end up salty. And I do have tips. If your gravy ends up being too salty, either because of the vegetable or the drippings themselves, or because of the way you spice it, you can add sugar or acid to contrast the salt on your palate. So you just go, quarter teaspoon by quarter teaspoon, alternating with the dry vermouth that I use for my mirepoix, and like just table like white sugar, and just stir it in just as you adjust. We call it adjusting the seasonings. That's David's job. He adjusts the seasonings. So here's a video, and you will be able to slow this down. And I talk about how I chop my vegetables. I do a fine chop. I do a rough chop. I have a variety of cutting boards. Green is for raw veg. I do have a technique for peeling the skin off of the garlic and smashing it. I do also have a tip about smashing your garlic and letting it set for a bit before you use it. Because if you smash it and then let it set, then it actually is more healthful for you. So once again, I have a variety of cutting boards, greens for vegetable. As you see when I'm cutting, I leave one part of the vegetable intact so that as I cut it, I don't have to chase little pieces around. Like I said, this is really fast. This is a quarter speed, but and then also, I'm just gonna play it one more time. See all my cutting boards, see me peel the onion from the root end, and then I slice it so that as I slice it up, it's already chopped. And then I peel my celery because I can't stand the strings in the celery. I have a method here where I press the garlic and release the skin and then peel top, peel the bottom, smashing it with my knife. And like I said, you can watch it more in slow motion later. It's really fast. So let's talk about the big day. Here we are on the big day. You're going to want to take your turkey out of the brine. You really want to brine the turkey at the full brine for probably 12 to 16 hours. So take it out early. You want to rinse it really, really thoroughly, inside and out, inside the skin, between the skin and the meat, and rinse it very, very well. And this is where your half a roll of paper towels comes in, because you're going to take your paper towels and you're going to dry the inside of the bird, the outside of the bird, the main cavity, the back cavity by the neck, between the skin and the meat along the thigh bone, between the thigh and the drumstick. You can get inside the skin, and you really want to bring out as much of the moisture as possible. And there is a tip: you want to let it sit on a rack, loosely covered with foil for, I mean, some people say even a day, several hours. You want to dry it as dry as possible. And that will be, you don't want to boil the turkey, for one thing. And it also, the drier the skin, the crispier the skin at the end of the baking. So that would be my tips on washing and drying your turkey. So, and then you're also going to bake your pie, prepare your stuffing, and calculate your roasting times. You're going to also do your potatoes. Let's go back here for a second. You're going to boil your potatoes, make your veggie dish in the hour or two before prep. I have hints on how to know when your turkey is done. Then after the turkey's done, while he's resting there, in the final moments, you got to make your pan gravy. So you take your turkey off, and while hopefully someone else is carving it and preparing for service, you're at the stove with your roasting pan. And I've got the recipe for that. And you just make your pan gravy right there with the drippings in the bottom of the pan. Somebody's carving tom, and you're getting your presentation, your table all prettied up for presentation. So here's your morning prep. Here's your croutons that you've made out of your breadcrumbs, toasted all up. And then you're going to talk, let's talk about what your stuffing's got going on here. This is the basics for a stuffing: bread, croutons, a mirepoix, which, like I said, we'll discuss in a different slide. I actually don't know if I put that slide in. And then I use cheese, and cheese is my secret ingredient. And I do agree that stuffing is a personal expression. Okay, so stuffing must have the croutons, the mirepoix, and that's your basics. I'd add cheese, and I wouldn't do a stuffing without cheese because it just makes it not dry and not, it gives it a depth of flavor that you really can't get anywhere else. But you could add walnuts or macadamia nuts or pecans or almonds. You could add sun-dried tomatoes, dried cranberries, raisins, apricots, fresh apples, persimmons. You could add hot peppers. You could add a sugar, make it a sweeter stuffing. Just personalize it, make it an expression. There'll be a theme for your meal. So, you know, let's talk about, let's see, here's our stuffing thing. Let's talk about the pie. Okay, so in the morning, do your pie, because, and I would actually do this before the stuffing, because in my oven, I need the whole space to cook the turkey. You could even do this the day before Thanksgiving, because most people like their pumpkin pie cooled anyways, refrigerated or cooled. So here goes pie. So here's me rolling out my crust. I could say about the crust, main thing to take away from this is I use plastic on the top and the bottom, and it makes it easier to roll, and it keeps it from sticking. I also have my pie rolling board. That's me doing my fresh ginger, and I have secrets for doing the fresh ginger, and I apologize for this going really fast. I have my secret pumpkin pie recipe also. Let's watch this one more time. You can watch this on your own frame by frame, but you know, just worry along. I told the first watchers to roll your pie crust from the outside in as you get towards the end of it, and then crimp, crimp, crimp to give it a golden crust. Give it a nice glaze with an egg yolk. And then the pumpkin pie recipe that I use is the one on the back of Libby's pumpkin pie can. It's my grandmother's recipe. I thought my whole life long it's my grandmother's recipe. My mother told me after Grammy Hazel passed away that it's the one on the back, the pie, the Libby's pie filling. So, okay, so roll, roll, roll. And then the ginger thing is you use the side of the grater that nobody ever thinks of using, but it's the one with the little star pokies. And you take your foil, your plastic wrap, and you put the plastic wrap on there and grate the ginger, and the plastic doesn't grate, the ginger just grates. So, and I also, let me play this one more time just to show you one more time. And like I said, you can slow this down, but you can just, the ginger just scrapes right off of the plastic when you do it that way. Worry, 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 pricks. Don't worry if you want your crispy pie crust. It's worth it to have it a little bit hard to put in the thing. So now while I'm par baking, I'm doing my ginger and making and I do leave off I leave out from the original recipe a half a cup of the cream because I add vanilla into mine. So then pour that in there, and I also have some, as the pie cooks, you'll notice that the crust is going to cook faster. And the easiest way that I have found to put a foil wrap around the outside of a pie crust is to take a square piece of foil, or as square as you can get, a rectangle piece, and fold it into quarters, and then cut off, leaving about a 2 to 4 inch edge all the way around. And what you end up with is a circle of foil that you can put over the pan and just, worry it around to crimp. And then this allows the center of the pie to finish cooking so that the edges don't get over brown. And you end up with a ta-da, beautiful pie. All right, so the morning of, we're also let's talk turkey. Let's talk about how long it's gonna take you to cook so that you can plan out your day. 15 times the number of pounds that your turkey weighs divided by 60 is going to give you a rough estimate of how long it's going to take. So that's basically your rough, dividing it by 60 just gives you the hours. 15 minutes times how many pounds divided by 60 minutes. The minutes cancel top to bottom. There's my yay algebra reference for the day. And that will give you the total in hours. Okay, so additionally, another way that you can know is that you can use a meat thermometer and bake to an internal temperature of 165 degrees. It is worth it to note that you need to use the thickest part of the meat to judge, and that the meat will continue to roast and increase in temperature by 5 to 10 degrees after you take it out of the oven. So 165 degrees, they used to say 180, but if you take it out when the internal temperature on your thermometer reads 165, it'll actually get up to probably close to 175, 180 degrees, including the stuffing. And this is temperature for a stuffed turkey. And that's a safe way to know. And also the way that I do it is tongue. So that means that the skin on your drumstick is going to pull up and away from the base of the bone. And I've got a picture of that I can show you, but Tom goes high water. So this is when you dress your bird. You can use a sewing kit or stainless steel skewers, but you can also just cut a slit in the skin next to the Pope's nose by the butt end, and just stick the drumstick ends through there, cross it. And this will hold your turkey nice and tightly closed. And then you want to lay the bird on his back. And I'm just going to put my thing up here so you can see me. You want him to be like this, elbows up, like he's kicking back, okay? Except for he don't have a head. All right, so that's how you lay your bird out, and that keeps the wingtips from overcooking. They'll be tucked under. And then this has a picture of me carving. This is kind of an impromptu. This one goes slower because Angela did this as a video. But you can see, and the kitchen's a mess, so please forgive. But you can see Tom's high water pants. See how the meat has pulled up from the bone. And we did this kind of impromptu. So I've already got half the breast and one of the drums off. But get a bowl for your stuffing. Whether you take your stuffing out prior or after, I usually find that it comes out when it wants to come out. So I ended up cutting it, cutting the drum off. It's easy, it's nice and done. There's a joint higher up on the bone than you would think that the drumstick would cut. If you've butchered a chicken, you know where that joint is, but feel around for it and that will pull you off your drumstick just like that, voila. And then you can take your wings and your thighs off. The breast is right there front and center, and I usually take both breasts off first. So here's me with the cursor, taking off the breast. So you go along the breastbone and you take your sharpest knife and you cut down into the, along the breastbone and down along the bone part. And you can just feel along with your knife, make nice smooth cuts, leave a little bit of meat on there, no one's gonna bother. The other one I sliced into slices. And depending on how many people are there, you can slice them both. I just sliced one. So then you feel around for the same with the drumstick, the wing has a joint. So feel around for the wing joint. And then I don't put the wing tips on the serving platter. I just find that to be overkill. Now that flap right there is the front stuffing flap. So that's a nice piece of skin with stuffing on it that you could probably just cut into four pieces and give them to your four favorite people because it's beautiful slab of stuffing with a nice crispy piece of skin. And just cut off your excess white meat right there going on. And then now you've got, what I do here is you can take the breastbone off, pull the stuffing out, and then you can flip it over and take off the thighs because you want to separate those off of the back of the bird. And that's not real classy. So I don't think I even included that in the video, but like I'm saying, if you get it going, you can get this done in about 15 minutes and you can Google a video that will give you nice instructions on it. Start with the breast, take the drumsticks off next, pull the stuffing out, flip it over. There's the Pope's nose right there. And then when you flip it over, it's much easier to take the thigh bones off. The thigh has a crease right there. You can see on the pocket. There is a place that you can get inside the thigh and take it, and you do want to cut those. But then in terms of pulling it off with just the one bone instead of several bones, you need to flip the bird over and yeah, Pope's nose on there because people fight over who gets to eat that. So, oh, I guess I did show that. So yeah, bottom of the bird, cut along the spine and just take off that meat there. And I don't know how long this part of the video is, but it seems to me it couldn't have been more than about 5 minutes it took me to break down this whole bird. And then, like I said, I'm not real particular about getting every scrap of meat because I like to make things with the leftovers. So, I mean, if you've got a whole bunch of hungry people, by all means, put it all out there. But we just left it whole. And I think I put in a shot of the finished platter because once you've got your platter out there, it's not the best bowl to put the stuffing in, but great shot, Angela. You should have a nice ta-da moment. So anyway, so that's carving the turkey. So let's go on from there. Oops. Let's see. So in the hour, besides carving the turkey and getting them all out of the oven and all that, you're gonna have to get your potatoes done. So boil and mashed potatoes. I usually peel them and cut them in the early hours and then just leave them in a pot of water. Potatoes, if you don't keep them submerged in water, they will dry out real fast on the outside. So unless you're gonna use them or keep them in water, I would not suggest that you do them until you're ready to boil them and mash them. As for a mashed potato recipe, I didn't include one because if you look there, I've got some things that I would encourage you to bring out this time of year if you only bring them out one time of year. And I have a little joke that I put in here because yeah, once a year is just fine. Crisco and lard, tamales and pie crust, you really can't do them without one or the other. And then as far as your presentation for service, I laugh because I say Crisco and lard once a year and the cream and the butter, but that's not really just once a year. But as far as bringing out the service platters, I would suggest that you go hunt for them, bring them out, and give them a good scrub down because they really do only come out once a year. So going over your calendar one more time, you've got today to shop, tomorrow to make your pie crust and you prep your vegetables. You've got your brining and your prepping and your croutons. And then Thanksgiving Day, the early hours, what to do right before service. Hopefully we make time to, and you know what, I'm saying homeless, but it doesn't need to be homeless. Maybe it's an elderly neighbor or a friend that you know isn't going to get to travel, but you know there's somebody out there that isn't going to go through the problem, the love and the trouble. And it is a day to focus on generosity. Find somebody that might want a warm plate of food that you love, that you want to share it with them, share this love with. So, and then on Saturday, enjoy your turkey sandwiches or your turkey croquettes, and then, or your turkey soup. And here are your recipes. So I've got your pumpkin pie, and this is the pie crust, like I said, that's included if you go out and buy your Cuisinart food processor. It will be included in the package with the recipes that come with the Cuisinart food processor. So the only thing I can add to that is that I freeze my butter and margarine, my butter and Crisco. I also freeze or use ice water rather than room temperature water because you want to keep it as cold as possible. And you want to have basically a fine meal texture. The picture in the beginning of the presentation is of the pie crust, a fine meal texture, and then you press it together. It makes 3 single crusts or 1 glorious apple pie, double crust. Pan gravy, mash or cut any of the large pieces of vegetable that are left in the bottom of the pan after you lift out your bird. You can or cannot pull off the grease if you've got a substantial amount of grease. Like I said, I usually pull off the fat before I cook, but use your turkey baster and just lift out the grease that's settled on top. But you do want a certain amount of grease in there because the flour and the water that are there is going to be like a roux. And a typical roux that you would use, R-O-U-X, I believe that's how it's spelled, but it's a white sauce, and that uses fat, usually butter. And in this case, we're substituting the fat that comes off the bird. So mix your flour and your water and your cold water to your flour, your spices, and your cold water until it's nice and blended with a whisk, no lumps. This way you avoid your lumpy gravy. And then you temper the flour and water mixture by adding in some of the pan drippings just to bring the temperature up so that you're not putting something very cold that's going to cook into something very hot, because it will cook before it mixes with the rest of the drippings in the pan. So Bring it up little by little by adding maybe a quarter cup, a half a cup of the drippings to the flour water mixture, and then pour the flour water mixture into your pan and increase the heat, raise the heat so that it boils for a good 1 to 2 minutes so that your flour is well cooked. And then your turkey croquettes, oops, wrong picture. You take everything that you have left over, meat, mashed potatoes, gravy even, stuffing, and you put it in your food processor, your Cuisinart food processor, means like you have to go out and get one, right? So, and you blend it until it's like the texture of a meat patty. And then you portion them into discs and coat with the flour, dip into the egg, cover with the breadcrumbs, and put it into the hot oil and fry it until it's crispy. And that right there brings me to the end of my presentation. Hopefully it wasn't way too long. And thank you for watching. If you have any questions, give me a phone call, a text, an email, and we can chat in person. And yeah, go make your lists and get shopping because time's a wasting. Thanksgiving is coming fast. I love you all. See you later. Bye.